So let's go into it. What is an accent actually? So people think it's something you have within you, but it's really not. It's not about what you have. It's really about what other people perceive when you speak, right? And it has to do with a lot of different factors. One of them being the way that you pronounce your words. Everyone has a language when they come into this world and they're in a certain environment with their family and other community members that you learn and you pick up from that family and that community. So when someone says you have an accent, what they're actually trying to say is that the way you pronounce words and the way you say your sentences is different from what they are used to or what they grew up with, what they became accustomed to over the years. And so because they're accustomed to something else, when you speak, they hear it differently. So again, it all comes down to what somebody else perceives of how you speak. Now, there's a common saying in my field of work that everyone has an accent. And in many ways, I can see what people mean when they say that, because they're trying to say that everyone has a way of pronouncing things, of pronouncing words. But I would have to disagree with that. I actually would say that no one has an accent, right? Because ultimately, to me, it's not about what you have. It's more so about what people hear. So you don't have an accent. People hear an accent. Depending on who they are to you and what kind of language community they grew up in and what they're used to, they might hear an accent when you speak. For example, if I were to say bonjour, someone who is a native French speaker may be able to hear the nuance in my accent and may be able to tell that I am not a native French speaker. If I were to say Dojiaotian, which is Mandarin, again, someone who is a native Mandarin speaker might hear something different. And if I were to say, for another example, in Korean, 감사합니다, the native speaker might hear that I might not be necessarily producing those sounds in the same way that they are used to hearing. It's all about what the other person hears when you speak. Now let's go into when are scenarios where your accent is hidden or your accent actually doesn't matter, where there are two main situations I can think of where having an accent is actually not the most important thing. So number one, this is when you're at home with your family. They might be more so concerned about what your family dynamic is. They might be more so worried about your interactions with them, how you fit into the family unit. Is the family running the way it should? That might be more of the concern of your family. They might not be so worried about how you're pronouncing your words or if you're saying things with a certain accent or not. So that's one situation. The second one is if you are speaking with someone who is from the same language community that you are from, someone that might have grown up in the same area that you grew up in, heard people speaking in the same way that you heard people speaking. And so when you're talking with each other, you might hear how they speak as normal and they might hear how you speak as normal as well. So in that situation, you basically don't have an accent to the other person, right? They just hear how you're speaking as what they are used to. So then the question is, when does having an accent actually become more important? When does it matter the most? Two situations in which having an accent does actually matter. Let's say you're going into work and you are the team lead of your meeting. In that case, people are going to be paying extra attention to what you're saying. Your communication and the way you're pronouncing words and conveying information suddenly goes up in the scale of importance in that particular situation. The second one, let's say you're a student and you have to give a class presentation. Well, it's the same thing, right? You're speaking and the way you communicate suddenly becomes very important because that is what people are zoned in on and that's what they're paying attention to. So you can see in very specific contexts, having an accent may not matter, and in other contexts, having an accent is very important depending on whether or not you can effectively convey the information that you want to convey. So now I want to get into if you are someone who's looking to work on your accent and change it in some way, shape, or form, what would we do if you were to come to me to work on this? I want to emphasize that in all of these strategies that we're going to be using, we are not taking anything away. It's about adding to what you already have. So the first thing we would focus on, because it's the first thing that people think of when they want to change their accent, is the pronunciation, of course. In this case, we would work on developing an accent that is close to the general American accent pronunciation of words. The second strategy we're going to use is the vocabulary. So if you are a speaker of this language, then that means you have some type of baseline vocabulary. You have some words that you can use to be able to convey what you want to say. It just might not come out as clearly or effectively as you want it to. Adding more vocabulary is going to help with how you sound and how effectively you can communicate. I'll give you an example of why the vocabulary and understanding certain phrases and sentence structure is so important. So I went to France, this was years back, and at that time I was still learning how to speak French, and even now I'm still working on that. I was speaking with someone, and in the middle of a conversation they said, "Wow, you sounded like a native French speaker just then." And it's because you use a phrase that we very commonly use. If I hadn't had known any better, I would think you were a native just because of the way you use that phrase. It sounded like you were so comfortable with it. And so that really clued me into the fact that it's not just about being able to pronounce every word correctly, but it's about being able to use phrases and words that are local to the community or to the group or culture, to the workplace or to the educational place that you're in. When you're able to use those words, those phrases, those sentences, all of a sudden you're being perceived as a more effective communicator. So building that additional vocabulary and the way you put sentences together is extremely important. So the next one I want to talk about, numbers 3 and 4 actually, are your intonation and your stress. So English is not a tonal language, meaning that changes in tone in words don't necessarily change the meaning of the word. However, if you're able to use the right intonation and stress pattern, that can be the difference between being understood or not being understood. That can be the difference between effectively conveying what you want to say and not quite being able to clearly say what you want to say. These are just a few of the things that you can work on to make your accent and the way you communicate more effective. So that is all for this video today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in accent training services, be sure to check out the description in the box below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe because I plan to do more videos like this one. Thank you. Bye.